We're waiting for the streaming to start. And by greeting streamers, I mean like myself looking at the control console over on the left, not anyone else really, making sure this is starting up. And then we will record part 3 for this week. Blah, 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 blah. Blue, 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 blue. Oh, there we go. It detected the thingy, and now we will do this thingy, and boom. Okay, now we will continue this operationally through the thing of the moo. And by that, I mean that just for ease of me aligning the edits together, I am going to play the break we ended the last thing with. And then, yeah, we'll start talking. Well, I'm talking now, but you guys know what I mean. So we were using this one. Okay, here we go. Is everybody ready? And by everybody, I mean me. And Alex, you're ready to be quiet. He's quiet anyway. He's doing his own thing. Here we go. And I'm back. Had some food, did some stuff with my son Alex, and now it's time to finish out the podcast. As I said, we will do the Epstein stuff, Epstein, whatever. And in introing it earlier in the show, I've said a couple times now, there's nothing actually new here. There's fundamentally, look, there may be more Epstein revelations to come at some point. We'll see. But this week particularly, we haven't learned anything. There's no new facts. There's no release of something that was private before and is now public. Everything that, I mean, look, we've known for 20 years about like Epstein being a scumbag, about Donald Trump being associated with him, about a whole bunch of other prominent people being associated with him in terms of like riding on his plane, visiting his island, all of that kind of stuff. Way back in the 2016 campaign, we had reports on this. We had people passing around the pictures of Trump and Epstein together. We had not call logs, but passenger logs from the plane revealed that showed like Clinton and Gates and all kinds of other people on the plane. So we've known all of this. But the fundamental thing that is happening this week is that, look, the MAGA side of the world, remember, a whole bunch of them are all associated with the QAnon thing too, like at least some of these rabid ones, that posits that there's this vast conspiracy, specifically among Democrats and liberals, to do child trafficking for sexual purposes. Remember, that's the whole Pizzagate thing was related to that too. And so there's this fundamental like thing that's been propagated within those circles for years and years and years now, that the Epstein files contain a client list, and that Epstein was procuring girls for all of these clients, and specifically that these clients include all sorts of prominent Democrats. And that's the reason they care about this, is that we're going to expose all these prominent Democrats and the fact that they were actually clients of Epstein, and he was procuring teenage girls for them to have sex with, and that's what's going on. And that's that they were the big thing that Donald Trump and his administration, when they got back into power this time, were going to reveal the full Epstein files, and specifically they were going to reveal that client list, and that client list would have a whole bunch of evil Democrats on it. That was the bill of goods that was being sold. And part of the problem here now is that some of the prominent people, like, how do you say his name? Boingo, Bogino, whatever, and Kash Patel, and our lovely Attorney General, all of these people fed into this like conspiracy theory. And then they ended up in the administration. Now, I'll point out, first of all, a lot of the stuff that happened with Epstein actually being convicted and him dying in jail and all this kind of stuff happened while Donald Trump was president the first time. So, like, if all of this information was in the FBI's files and they wanted to reveal all this stuff, they could have done it last time too. Oh, but of course, deep state, like, was fighting them. That was inappropriate, Alex. I now have to edit. Okay. Makes more work for me later. No. I have to remember what I was saying so I can edit. I'm upset. No. Oh, I got mad because I saw the replay over here. And I thought you'd done it again. Okay, stop. So if they wanted to release this stuff, they could have done it last time. And I know deep state, blah, 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 blah. The FBI was against them last time. And this time they have their people. They're really their people in there. I mean, look, honestly, like, it seems like what happened to me. No, it seems to me that what happened is that these folks who'd been pushing these conspiracy theories all along got in there, actually saw the information, and realized there wasn't a lot there. Now, I want to be clear what I mean by that, because clearly Epstein was doing a lot of bad things, and clearly there were a lot of famous people that were in or around that. Now, how many of them partook in, doing something with the young women who were coerced into this? I don't know. What I suspect is there isn't anything as straightforward as a client list, like where Epstein was going around and saying, like, oh, okay, Bill Gates is coming this week and I have him on the list, and here's what we're going to do for Bill Gates, and we're going to get like these women or whatever. I'm just picking Bill Gates as one possible name. Sorry, Bill, if you're listening. Or Bill Clinton or anybody else, or Donald Trump, because he was also very associated with this. Now, all of the people who are upset, of course, never, to them, it's always about like all the prominent liberals that might have been involved here. They always sort of ignore the fact that Donald Trump was in this circle as well. I don't know. But I suspect there wasn't like just a straightforward list. Like everybody's saying client list. And I know that Pam Bondi actually said, I have the list on my desk. Well, she later says she meant the files, not just the list. And there is no list now, is what they're saying. But I want to be careful about like, I think people are very intentionally mixing up a few different things. There's a client list, there's just some list, like maybe the passenger list from the plane, which actually was made public a long, long time ago. And then there's just evidence of association with Epstein. And then there's evidence of actually participation in these. Yeah, I want to use the right word. I mean, essentially, this is statutory rape because there's no consent for underage people. Uh, yeah, especially with older people. I mean, they carve out gray areas if you're like you're 17 and you're doing something with a 19-year-old because you're really close in age still. There's some exceptions for those kinds of things, but fundamentally, you know, 50 something year old and a 16-year-old, that's just not legal. That's rape no matter what. And because the younger person is not considered legally able to consent to that, regardless of what else is going on. So there's rape, prostitution, all kinds of things that are potentially involved here. Um, and there may be evidence of that kind of stuff, and that still wouldn't be a client list necessarily if it wasn't like a list. And people are sort of aligning all these things together. So I think, like, my guess, if you really had to put all this together as to what's really going on here, is that when people like Bondi and Boingo Boingo and Cash Patel and all these folks actually got to see the stuff, they realized that there is nothing as straightforward as here's the list. And I suspect, and I know a lot of people are jumping straight towards, like, they're covering this up because they realize Donald Trump is on the list. And the way Donald Trump seems to be panicking about this, the more he panics about it, the more it seems like he's got to be implicated somehow. But let's back up from that a little bit, and we'll return there in a minute. Um, I suspect there is nothing as straightforward as a flat out list. Like these, where there's a direct, like, single sheet of paper saying these 30 people, I went out and we got underage girls to have sex with these men. Like a written confession, essentially. Like if such a thing existed, I think it would have come out years and years ago. Um, Now, I know even there's like questions of, well, they would have kept it secret if they couldn't prove any of this, right? Because just because Epstein wrote something down on a piece of paper doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Um, but there's also, there are apparently like a whole bunch of flash drives that were confiscated when they arrested the guy years back, and that supposedly have video on them of these underage people with people. I suspect on that, like they've said, we can't release that obviously because it's underage uh, girls in compromising positions, and it's illegal to even possess this stuff other than law enforcement. And we obviously can't release that, even like redacted versions of it. We want to protect the victims here, and I actually buy that to some extent. But I also think part of the problem, like if I had to guess, and this is all guessing and speculation, that identifying the men on these is not straightforward, like, or is not like solid enough that you could prove it in a court of law. Like, you could say, oh, it looks like it might be Bill Clinton or Donald Trump or whoever. Um, but you got like fuzzy video in bad lighting and just enough that there's like plausible doubt there. And so they didn't think it was enough to run on. I mean, you've got this stuff has been through enough different people in enough different administrations that I feel like if they had something absolutely solid on anyone, Democrat, Republican, unspecified partisan, celebrity, whatever, I feel like it would have leaked by now. Like the specific leak. Now you've got a few people like who've made comments like they've seen some of these things and they are incriminating and blah blah blah, but they're all reluctant to give any specifics, and some of them like are clearly pushing this for their own personal motives. So I don't trust it. So I think it's I suspect that it's a bunch of people like on the MAGA side who were really pushing this because their agenda was there's these secret Epstein files that show that Democrats are corrupt child abusers. And so in fur, in furtherance of that conspiracy theory, they talked about the list and they talked about videos and they talked about whatever and they talked, and then they actually came into their positions in administration and got to see everything that was there and realized that it just wasn't substantive enough to do anything with. Like maybe there's some ambiguous stuff, but there wasn't the smoking gun. And they actually realized it. In other words, I think to some degree, they're telling the truth now for the first time, where all of this, they just sort of realized that, there is no there. And I suspect, well, let's put it this way. Prior to the latest round of Trump's rants about this, that's where I thought things lay, you know, and that they were, oh no. Okay. Close. Okay. I'll note that interrupted. A completely different window and a completely different app crashed. And I suspect that, look, it's simply a matter of now they didn't want to admit there was nothing. Instead, because they'd riled up their base. So this is a matter of like people who had lied and lied and lied for years coming face to face with, oh shit, it actually is, there's nothing we can do there. He really did commit suicide, and there's no smoking gun there. There's probably all kinds of incriminating stuff, but not any smoking gun on any of the big, we're going to go after the Clintons and Bill Gates. And I keep mentioning those two names because those are the ones I keep remembering are mentioned all the time. But like, there's really a list of all kinds of people that they think are associated. Um, and, and so we're just going to say that now. Now, of course, the push is, well, okay, then release the files. And they say they can't release the files because of protecting the victims. Well, look, there are ways to redact the victims out of things, if you wanted to. But and look, MAGA's really, really upset. They were promised this and they're not getting it. And so what next? Well, then Donald Trump started protesting so hard, like, get over it, move on, like, look somewhere else. And, a lot of people have said, like, this is he protests too much kind of moment. Like, they're not, you'd think the natural thing, if they specifically, they said all this stuff and then they got in and they saw the details and they realized, sorry, we were wrong. There's nothing here. The way to clear it up, be transparent as possible, is release as much as you possibly can. obviously redact names and pictures and everything else of the victims, but release as much as possible. But Donald Trump comes in like being all paranoid, telling people to move on, blah, blah, blah. It's just the more he does of this, the more it leads credence to the alternate theory that the reason they don't want to release everything has nothing to do with everything I just said, but instead has to do with Donald Trump's all over the stuff. you know? But I'll add, honestly, we had 4 years of a Biden administration in between. If there was stuff in there that was definitively, you know, evidence against Donald Trump that you could definitely say Donald Trump did XYZ, let's like go after him for that, then you'd think they would have done something with it. So I feel like even if there is something on Donald Trump in the unredacted files, it's probably not conclusive stuff where, it probably shows Donald Trump palling around with Epstein, but we knew that already. Maybe worst case scenario, there's a video somewhere of something that you could like say, maybe that's Donald Trump in that video doing something he shouldn't, but we can't really tell for sure. Again, it's blurry, it's dark, it's whatever, and we can't tell for sure. And so it's unusable in a court of law. And yeah, and that's the worst case scenario. There may not even be that, but it may just be that Donald Trump finds this whole thing embarrassing. But the fact that he's protesting so hard is spinning everything up. Someone commented on Blue Sky, I think, that he apparently hasn't heard of the Streisand effect, which is that if you want something to go away and tell people, please don't pay attention to this, all it does is get more attention to it. And what we've got here, look, bottom line, I suspect that there's not anything actually actionable in the actual Epstein files. If you and I got to look at the unredacted version of all this and went through it all, I suspect that although we might find a whole bunch of things that would make you suspicious of various prominent people being involved in things, there isn't enough to prove anything about anybody other than Epstein Maxwell, who have already been through a process, and Epstein is dead and Maxwell's in jail. You know, um, but that doesn't mean there might not be lots that's embarrassing or might make you it's not provable in a court of law, but it's enough that the average person on the street would be like, oh yeah, that's them. They were clearly involved. Clinton's guilty, Trump's guilty, Gates is guilty, you know, all these other people are guilty too. And probably, on both sides of the political spectrum, and a whole bunch of celebrities who are you know, aren't publicly associated with either end of the spectrum politically, but just not provable. And so, like, they can't just put that out in that form. Um, but MAGA's going crazy because they have been spun up so much on these files and on Epstein and how it was, surely it was going to take down all the liberal elites. And now Donald Trump himself is saying, no, forget about it. And they are pissed. Like, if you looked at social media all weekend this weekend, there's all kinds of, screenshot. I'm not on Truth Social. I am not on X. But there are screenshots from both of them circulating about like hundreds and hundreds of people reacting to things like that from the MAGA side who are clearly incredibly angry about this and believe that they have been betrayed, that Donald Trump is turning on them, and why would he do this? And some of are blaming him on Pam Bondi. I think Pam Bondi is the natural scapegoat that everybody's trying to like make the target of this, because a lot of these MAGA folks, although they feel betrayed by this, they're still sort of in the mode of this can't possibly really be what Donald Trump wants. This is like Pam Bondi. It's her fault. And let's get rid of her and then we can get back to business. And then Donald Trump will do the right thing. And I don't think a lot of them have flipped to the position of, oh, Donald Trump is resisting this because he's in the files, because he's actually guilty. I've seen a bunch of this anger, but not very many people on that side of the fence going there. I've seen liberals going there, but for the most part, the MAGA folks are upset at the situation. They're upset at Bondi. They're upset at Trump, but there's a lot of like, I don't understand why this is happening. There's not very much, oh, this must be because Donald Trump himself is guilty. But there are a lot of people that are so upset about this, and some of them are adding it and saying, on top of like, the big beautiful bill isn't what we asked for. Um, the we thought only criminals were going to be deported. This isn't what we asked for. So there are a bunch of those kinds of things going on there too. And so there are a lot of people out there saying, I can't support Donald Trump anymore. A lot in quotes, a lot of sort of vocal people on social media. And I have to say, some of that traffic may be fake from people who aren't real people, who are just like troll bots and all this kind of stuff. But it includes a lot of prominent MAGA people, like that are real. That, like Laura Loomer is mad, for instance. And and a bunch of others whose names I'm not going to recall off the top of my head, but a bunch of these folks are mad and upset and believe they've been betrayed, and it is fun to watch for the Schadenfreude. Is that how you say it? Schadenfreude? Whatever. To watch, because this is, out of all the times that Donald Trump has seemingly gotten trouble for something. I mean, people on the left-hand side of the spectrum are mad at whatever he does every single day because his entire existence practically is offensive. Everything he does every day, the way he does it, what he is advocating, what he is pushing, um, are things that we fundamentally believe are wrong and in many cases evil. And I shouldn't say his existence. If he went back to, if he was just a reality TV star doing his thing, he'd be an offensive little person, but we wouldn't care and we wouldn't necessarily call it evil. But as president of the United States with power, he's doing a lot of stuff that is bad. But like, it's no surprise when someone on the left is upset by Donald Trump in one way or another. Either something new he's done, something he's said, something revealed about his past. No surprise. And we've occasionally had sort of the situations where sort of middle of the road Republicans temporarily seem upset. We had that at the Access Hollywood tape. We had that after January 6th, where a bunch of these folks are like, now he's past the line. Now we're moving on. And then, of course, they come back into the fold a few days later. So, but this seems to be for almost the first time where we've seen not just like, old school mainstream Republicans saying, okay, maybe now's the time we can escape Donald Trump, but we're seeing sort of MAGA faithful who are upset and and pissed and expressing their extreme discontent. So we'll see how long this lasts and for what. We'll also see how big it is once we see some polling that actually reflects this. I mean, Donald Trump's overall approval rating has been dropping lately anyway. It's not at his all-time lows. That was back in May. He hit a low in May and then he improved a bit. Now he's heading back down, but he hasn't gotten worse than he was in May yet, as of I checked yesterday, I think. We'll see how it affects polling and all of that kind of stuff. But what's important to remember about this is the people who seem to be upset this time are not your marginal Donald Trump voters. They're not the people who, were Trump voters, or were non-voters who went to Trump for the first time this time around, or anything like that. The people who seem to be upset seem to be the diehard, the people who actually show up at MAGA rallies and who wave the flags and wear the red hats. And so not just a Republican who's like, okay, Donald Trump isn't great, but he's better than the Democrats. No, this is the people who've been all in on him for a long time, or a lot of people like that anyway. And so we'll see. So even if the numbers are small, this particular group defecting seems like a significant blow if it sticks. Like, one possible way out for Donald Trump right now, assuming his underlying issue isn't just that there's evidence here that shows that he's directly guilty. I mean, remember, there was that one case that disappeared right before the 2016 election where a girl was in the process of submitting a lawsuit saying that Epstein and Donald Trump raped her together. And she provided all kinds of lurid details in her deposition. And then she withdrew it all and disappeared. And that's never been fully gone back to. Like, was she paid off? Was she just scared? Had she made it up completely and it wasn't true and she just couldn't stand the heat and so decided to cut that off before she got caught having made it up? We don't know. But assuming it's not just that Donald Trump knows that these files include stuff that would show his own guilt, the smart thing to do, fire Bondi, blame her for this recent decision to say that there's nothing else to see here, everybody move on, and promise to double down and investigate further, and we will release the stuff and we will go through the process, and then just kick the can further down the road. Don't have to actually, I mean, if it really does show nothing of substance, like I was speculating earlier, figure out how you can release a lot more of it. Now, the true conspiracy theorists will never be satisfied no matter what you do. And you have to be smarter about it. I mean, this time, one of the things to prove that Epstein had actually committed suicide, they released some video of the hallway, but then what they released had a 1-minute gap in it and evidence that it had been multiple clips compiled together and put through imaging editing software a couple of times. Now, who knows whether what they released was actually manipulated in some way, or whether it was just, hey, we're going to use, and I heard someone say it was Adobe Premiere. We'll use Adobe Premiere to assemble clip A and clip B. So we put them together and then we'll save it to a new format, blah, blah, blah. But then they released that as if it was the original. Like, you can make up an innocent explanation for that. But if you really was truly innocent, that is not what you do. You're not sloppy like that. If you say you're releasing the originals, you release the goddamn originals, without any messing with them, so that you don't get the conspiracy theory people saying, well, what about the missing minute? And why was this edited? And what did you change? And blah, blah, blah. But you could recommit to say, okay, we really will release everything. And we, of course, will redact the stuff about the victims, and that'll take some time, and we will get back to it, and we will do this right, and we will release everything, and you guys will see at that point that there's nothing to see. And again, you'll never convince the truly diehard conspiracy theory folks. This, one of the nature of these kinds of conspiracy theories is because you're telling people that the elite is out to manipulate it. You will never believe anything they present, but you could do more of this and you could delay it. And potentially Trump could kick this can all the way through the rest of his administration. Um, or he could actually present something in a few months that showed this. Of course, that doesn't work as well if there really is incriminating material in there. Um, and so I don't know. Like, again, my initial impression of all this was there really is nothing there, or at least nothing usable that could be lead to a prosecution. And the all of these folks who had been pushing the conspiracy theories, just once they were in there, were confronted with the reality that there really isn't anything there. Again, at least nothing usable. Maybe there's some of that stuff that would be scandalous but not actually usable in a court of law. And then there are all kinds of, maybe they leak some of that, I don't know, but like there are all kinds of reasons why you wouldn't want to leak that. um and that was my initial inclination, that there really is nothing there, because with 20 plus years of investigations into this man, you'd think if there was, they would go somewhere. Now, we know, like the first time he was investigated, a lot was swept under the rug and he got off really, really light. And it was the second time around, only after press investigations from the Miami Herald, I believe, that led to the second round of prosecutions that led to him actually going to jail. And even then, again, the call is like, well, what about everybody else involved? Like, he wasn't just doing this for himself, right? There are reports of parties and there are all these other people. Can't we nail any of them? And so the question is there really evidence that could nail anybody else other than Epstein and Maxwell? And I've, it seems to me like with all of these years spanning multiple investigations by multiple parties, if there was enough to go after anybody else, either Trump in his first round or Biden or somebody would have gone after that. Their state authorities involved too. Somebody would have gone after it. They can't all be intimidated by everybody. I mean, they could even be selective. Like the Republicans could only go after the Democrats and ignore the evidence against any Republicans. The Republicans could have done it the other way around and gone after. Did I say that way? Anyway, each party could go after the other party if they wanted to be unfair. Now, I would hope that if the evidence did exist, they'd go after a person no matter who they were. Republican, Democrat, famous, not famous, poor, rich. If they were implicated in a way that you could prove in all of this stuff, we should be going after them. End of story, done. But yeah, but at the very least, you got to think like, okay, if 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 the Biden administration had concrete evidence on Trump, wouldn't they have gone after him? If the Trump administration had concrete evidence against Clinton, wouldn't they have gone after him? Like, it's hard to believe they didn't. So I feel like the most likely thing is still that there's nothing usable there. But the fact that Donald Trump keeps protesting about this makes you think like, what? Why is he protesting this hard if that's not the case? Why don't they just release enough to prove what they're saying, if not to their diehard supporters, to everybody else? Yeah, and the Democrats are, I think, piling on this in the right way. I know sometimes the advice is if your enemy is destroying themselves, just leave them alone. But I see no problem with the Democrats piling on here and saying, let's have hearings. Let's talk about why we're not releasing the documents. Let's look into who funded what, when, where, and what the details of this were. And they're asking all kinds of questions. They're making hay out of the fact that like Donald Trump Jr. a few years ago was talking about the releasing the files, and George Conway responds to the old tweet from years ago by saying, "But your dad says not to." I love it. They're trolling them. They're pushing forward all this kind of stuff. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, I should look up the right way to say Boingo 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 name, Dan Bogino. Anyway, the reports that he's considering resigning. There were reports that Kash Patel was considering resigning, but he's denied them. There's questions about will Bondi get pushed out. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but right now, all of this like conspiracy mongering on the MAGA side has been blowing up in their faces, and it's fun to watch. So we'll see how it plays out. And with that, I am done. Let's close out the show. Everybody go to curmudgeons-corner.com. You can see all the ways to contact us. I still have not linked our TikTok. I will say, last week's show, I have not posted any TikToks. And the reason is like Riverside produces little automated clips that I can post that I usually either take as is or make really minor tweaks to in their internal editor. But this time, for whatever reason, my voice and Yvonne's voice were misaligned by like 5 seconds. So when we were like, would go back and forth, instead of I talk, then Yvonne talks, then I talk, it was more like I talk, then there's a 5-second gap, then Yvonne and I start talking at the same time. One of which is what Yvonne should have said in that gap, and one of which is my response to what he said. And it just came up a muddled mess. So I posted nothing from last week's show. And like I try, their editor lets you mute parts out and stuff, but as far as I could tell, didn't let you slide things around. Maybe there's a way, but I couldn't find it. And I just decided not to worry about it. Anyway, that I was reminded all of that because there's no link yet on the webpage to the TikTok. I guess TikTok is no, not okay. Again. You lose the next round. We will not finish Legend of the Spirit Dog tonight, no matter what. That will wait to another day. You know better. I don't even know what I was saying when I stopped. Scooch around. I am not happy when you do that. It is not funny. I know you're laughing. It's not funny to me. Anyway, I guess TikTok is staying around forever at this point. Like Donald Trump is illegally extending and extending and extending without any sort of resolution what's going on. So I'll add the logo eventually, I guess. But anyway, the website includes all the other ways to contact us. I said that already. And our archives, transcripts for the last couple years of shows, all that kind of fun stuff. Our archives going back all the way to 2007. Wow, it's been a lot of years. Anyway, and of course, a link to our Patreon, where Yvonne and I, that's our Slack. Our Patreon is where you can give us money because we like money, and the $25 or so a month we make off this right now is not enough for either Yvonne or I to quit our day jobs and do this full time. And that is the goal here. So you folks have got to step up a lot more than you have. No, I'm kidding. But hey, if anybody wants to help out with the minor expenses and all that kind of stuff for the show, we do appreciate it. And at various levels, we will mention you on the show. We will send you a postcard. We will ring a bell. We will send you a mug, all this kind of stuff. I still owe a couple cards. I owe cards to, oh man, my little log of who I owe stuff to. I owe Pete and Greg a card, and which I have already written, but I have to finish up and send to Yvonne so he can add stuff to the cards and then mail to you guys. And I just never get around to it. And I owe Todd a mug. I'm just so bad at this. I owe Todd a mug for actually co-hosting the show like a month and a half ago or something. So eventually, I think I owe him a mug. I don't think I've done it already. It's all, I'll figure it all out. someday. But anyway, importantly, at $2 a month or more, we will invite you to our Curmudgeon's Corner Slack, where Yvonne and I and all kinds of other folks have been sharing links, talking about the news, talking about other stuff. I mentioned my new car. I talked a lot about like new car stuff on there. Oh, by the way, during this last break, I did actually look up some of the things that are added between the SEL version of the Ioniq 5 and the limited version, which is the next one up. There's also an XRT or something, but that's specifically like marketed towards off-roading and stuff. And I don't know. Anyway, there are a number of things. I was right. There's some I'm jealous of. Like I think the automatic seats have a few more features. Like there's a better audio system, like slightly better speakers. Honestly, the seat stuff, I could see that being cool. The speakers, okay, that's cool, but I don't really care. Like I mostly listen to podcasts. The audio quality is not a big deal for me. I sometimes listen to music, but I'm not the kind of person who would be like, oh man, that speaker is so much better quality. I wouldn't notice that. There are some things with like a couple safety features I would like apparently there's like if you're backing up and you're about to run over or anything, like something automatic brakes in that situation. There's and I forget if it was the XRT or limited or both that has like a 360 camera thing, so on your little screen you can see all around your car. That is cool. I would miss that. But then it has a heads up display. I don't think I really would care about that. Like I've never used one, but when I've seen them, I haven't been all that impressed. Like I feel like I need that. And like a sun or moon roof, whatever. It's not the kind you can open and stick your head out of, but it's the kind that like, you can see the sun through the top. And I don't think I would have wanted that anyway. And I think I saw that it's like slightly bigger wheels, and I wouldn't care about that. And in fact, I think I saw it like reduces the range slightly because of that. So I don't know. I'm not as upset as I thought I would. There's some of the features on the limited I would be like, yeah, that would be cool. It would be nice to have. But there's none that I immediately was like, oh man, I should have gotten that instead. And I'm really pissed I got the one I did. I have not felt that way. It's mostly like, yeah, okay. I think the price difference would have been another 4,000 or so. And I'm like, yeah, I like what I have. So I'm okay. I'm not as upset as I thought. So, oh, way distraction. We talk about all that kind of thing on the what I just said that I actually looked at the list. I have not said on the Slack yet. So, and I'm not going to before this show is out. So, you listeners have a heads up on the Slack on that one. But we do usually give a something from the Slack story we shared. So I will give the latest one that I shared on the random Slack channel. Like we divide it up into like there's one that's more serious stuff and the one that's more like random stuff. And so this is from the random one. This is an article from the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Company, from As It Happens, which is one of their radio shows. Good show, available as a podcast. I recommend it. It's a fun like sort of news, but like feature news. Like it's a bunch of interesting stories and stuff like that. I don't listen to it every day or even every week, but it's a fun show. If you're not in Canada, you can get it as a podcast, as I said, or all sorts of other ways. But I guess in Canada, you could actually listen to it on the radio, but who does that anymore? Anyway, it's chimps are sticking grass and sticks in their butts, seemingly as a fashion trend. And it says the new phenomenon appears to be a fresh spin on an old fad of wearing grass in the ear. And so, yeah, they talk about this. Apparently, a couple generations of chimps ago, there was a chimp that started sticking grass in their ear as sort of a fashion thing, as far as they can tell. And then a whole bunch of the other chimps started imitating, and that actually got passed down a generation or two before it faded out. But then recently they started doing it again, for first in the ear, but then some chimp apparently came up with the innovation that instead of sticking the sticks and grass in their ears, they could stick it in their butts. And that has now been spreading through this particular chimp community. Um, they speculate that sticking it in the ear may have come from them watching humans, because apparently these are a population of captive chimps somewhere, and apparently one of their caretakers was like cleaning their ear with grass. And I'm like, really? Do people do that? You know, I've heard of people doing it with Q-tips, and I've stuck like pencil erasers in my ear, and I know you're not supposed to do that. Like I've seen Dr. Mike on YouTube talking about how you should not stick Q-tips and other objects in your ears if you're trying to clean out your ears. They're like liquids that you can do if you really need to, but you should not be like just sticking stuff in your ear, because the chances of damage are high, because you can screw up and like mess up your eardrum. But like, I don't know. I two responses to that. My wife asked, and I had thought about this, but she said it out loud. You know, could they have picked it up from watching people wear earrings? Did they really have to see someone sticking grass in their ear? They could have generalized this. But then she also said, okay, if they picked up the grass in the ear from watching humans, where exactly did they pick up the sticking sticks up your butt from? Were they seeing humans do that too? And I'm like, no, the article says they innovated that themselves. And she's like, really? Are they sure? Anyway, apparently this is now the big fashion trend among chimps at the Chimfunshi Wildlife Orphanage in Zambia. That's where this is going on, but this is apparently all the rage, and they're doing it and passing the behavior on to each other, teaching each other how to do it, I guess. I don't know. And apparently it's a fashion statement of some sort. Okay. That seems like a good place to end. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for Curmudgeon's Corner again. Have a great week. Hopefully, Yvonne is feeling better next week. I saw some updates from him on the Slack that he still wasn't feeling great as of at least Sunday night, maybe, or at least Saturday night, maybe even Sunday as I'm recording this. This is now Sunday afternoon as I'm recording this, US time. And yeah, hopefully he's feeling better and we do a normal show next week. But with that, we end the show. Stay safe, everyone. Goodbye. Okay, hitting stop. We're not watching it. We're not doing any 1 through 10s on Monday night either now. Or any other activities other than the movie we were going to anyway. No. Alex threw stuff at me. Goodbye, folks. Hitting stop.